Ladies and gentlemen,
we're back again.
We are here and ready to talk. Of course, I don't know that we're ever not ready to talk.
No, we're never at a loss for words.
No, but today definitely ready to let her rip. So we have a very interesting topic. Do you want to announce the topic today?
Yeah, due to popular demand, we are going to be talking about crime for real this time.
Yes, this is, we are not pulling your leg this time.
Yeah, it's for real.
We are actually going to talk about true crime. And further than that, we want to dig a little bit into...
We're honing in on the Mafia.
The Mafia, yes. So I know that a lot of people think... In fact, I know that I felt like I had a handle on what the Mafia was, but let's talk a little bit about what the Mafia is.
Yeah, we're not just talking about the Mafia in general. I believe we're talking about the Mafia and their actions here in the United States. Is that right?
Well, a little bit, yes.
Oh, so we're going on foreign too.
Let's go. Yeah. So
this is
basically,
a surprise. I'm learning with you guys.
Okay, so basically the history of... You have the Mexican Mafia, you have an Irish Mafia, but the one that we'll be primarily talking about today is the Italian Mafia.
Okay.
The Italian Mafia actually began in Sicily in the 12th century. And
12th century?
In the 12th century,
okay.
Yeah. So you had a lot of invaders because of its location in the Mediterranean. You had lots of different countries and peoples that would invade the island of Sicily. And so they found that they had to kind of turn to family. And they began to lean heavily on family and
someone they could trust.
That's exactly it. Okay. And so that's kind of how the Mafia got its start. And then the Mafia here in the United States really got its start in the late 1800s is when a lot of, they say that it first began, but it really took off in the 1930s and 1940s when the several Italian families were running from Mussolini and they were running from fascism. And so they came
like the
over.
Birth of the United States.
That's right. So they came to the United States, but they did not let go of their ways from what they had learned from their families.
Which was sticking very close to their families.
That's right. So the Mafia is basically, it's a secret society. It's a brotherhood. It is one of those things that they have lots of rules. They don't really answer to anybody else. They answer to each other. And it's driven by family. And so basically to get in, to the Mafia, there's several things that have to happen. But number one, they call it a made Mafia member. That's an accepted Mafia member when a man is made. Okay, so I'm a made member. That means that I'm official. And so a made Mafia member...
I've heard that term before. He's a made man.
Yeah. So a made Mafia member takes an oath. It's an oath of secrecy and an oath of loyalty.
And this oath, are they always for a lifetime?
It's always for a lifetime.
Well, it's like a gang.
Exactly. Yeah. And basically, not only is it an oath for a lifetime, so all of the made members of that family will gather together and they bring this person in and they go through several different rituals, which nobody knows exactly all those rituals.
They call them mean names.
There you go. But the one thing that we do know that they do is they actually prick the trigger finger of this person, so that
of blood, it's sealed with blood. Okay.
That's exactly it. So whatever trigger finger this person has, they prick that, take that, and then it's a blood oath for life that you are part of the brotherhood. And so basically, there's several golden rules with the Mafia, but the number one is loyalty. It's all about family. It's all about being loyal to us.
That's what's worked for them in the past, and that's what's going to keep them together.
That's exactly it. And then number two, one of the biggest rules is their code of silence or their code of secrecy. And so because they are a secret society, they don't share what they do. They don't share where they go. I say all of that that's the way it used to be. However, we don't want to get too much into this, but when John Gotti, who's passed away now, but when John Gotti became a mob boss, he actually he started signing autographs, and he wanted to publish it. He wanted to kind of make it almost like movie star status.
Right.
So, but before that, it was always in the background, code of silence.
Yes,
you don't know what we do.
They wanted to influence things and run things, but they didn't want everybody to know they were running things.
That's right.
But John Gotti was very much, hey, I'm a mafia guy, and you guys better be afraid of me.
That's exactly it. Now,
I want everybody to know.
Yes. So I will say this right from the get-go, that there's so much that we don't know, and so everything that I'm saying is just been from research and from things that I've read or heard. So there's the old saying is there's two sides to every story. So I'm sure that there's more to this, and the mafia gets a bad name a lot of times, but a lot of times,
yeah, they are killing people.
They are killing people. However, their motives a lot of times probably did come from a good place at some point. In that they were protective of their families and their neighborhoods. That's kind of how it got its start. And there again, I'm not trying to I'm not condoning their actions, but they were great as far as defending family and defending their neighborhoods.
They're drawing their own ethical lines, and when those are crossed, they're justified in their actions up to and killing people.
That's right. So. And the third rule, and we'll get to the killing part in a second, but the third rule of the mafia, from what I've read, is that you are property of what they call Cosa Nostra. Cosa Nostra is, it means our way. And basically, that's another name for the mafia, is Cosa Nostra. And so you become, when you take this blood oath, you become the property of Cosa Nostra. In other words, if we tell you to go sell drugs, you will sell drugs. You're our property.
Right.
If we tell you to go put a hit on somebody, you will go put a hit on somebody. Why? You're our property. And so it's basically you don't belong to the United States. You don't belong to your nationality. You belong to Cosa Nostra. And so those are really kind of some of the basic rules. In the 80s and the 70s and 80s, there was basically, like you were talking about killing, there was bodies just laying everywhere. The mafia families were just killing left and right. So let's talk about mafia families for just a second, because in New York alone, there's 5 different mafia families. There's the Colombos, the Gambinos, the Luccheseos, the Genovese family, and the Bonanno family. Sorry, I'm not Italian, so I'm sure I'm not pronouncing
I've only heard
these.
of one of those. I am Italian, and I've only heard one of those names.
Okay, so that's the 5 New York families. And then you have a Philadelphia family. And then you have a New Jersey family. And so, there's all of these different families. However, and then you have the Chicago families and et cetera.
Right, okay. So things get kind of out of hand in the 70s and 80s.
That's right. So there was a lot of, basically these families were fighting each other. Most of the time, people getting killed were members of these families or associates of these families.
Right.
So these people aren't going around just killing willy-nilly.
Yes,
they're killing each other.
They're not killing what they deem as innocent people. They're killing people who have betrayed them or dishonored their family or something of that effect.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the biggest things, is making sure that you don't dishonor the family. And so basically, once you get made, you're a made mafia member, their status, it's just like an army. So you have the boss, which is the top, then you have the underboss, and then under that, I believe you have captains, perhaps a lieutenant. I'm not certain of that.
Yeah, there's a ranking structure.
There's ranking structure. And so, but when somebody befriends you, they say, quote, he's a friend of ours. You may not be a part of a mob family, or maybe you are. But if I say you're a friend of mine, basically I'm saying you're good with us. We're going to protect you. We're on good terms. Everything's all right between you and I. So even if we're in different families, if you're in the Colombo family and I'm in the Genovese family, but I say he's a friend of mine, That's saying, hey,
Yeah,
we don't have any war.
You vouched for me.
That's exactly
I'm
it. We're
vetted.
good. So you have this, and one question that was asked of one of a former Mafia member, they asked him, what could you do? What could have been done? What kind of punishment could we as the government have put out there to have stopped you from doing all of the different things that you did? And he said the greatest punishment, and I quote, the worst punishment is that we put you out, that no one will talk to you.
Oh, wow.
So basically the greatest punishment in Cosa Nostra was not killing you. That happened, and that was terrible.
It was making you an outcast.
It was making you an outcast. It was saying, hey, you're not a friend of ours. We will not talk to you. We will not have business dealings with you. We won't work with you. We're done with you. That was the greatest punishment that could happen to so many Mafia members. Why? Because they were a family. So it was like a family saying, we'll no longer talk to you. So
it's getting disowned, and everybody you know, every house you hung out with, everybody that vouched for you, none of that mattered anymore, because now you're an outcast.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So basically, a lot of times you were either raised in a family that your parents and your grandparents and maybe even your great-great-grandparents could trace their roots in Cosa Nostra. And so you just kind of came into it. That's all you knew. And so you came into becoming a made member just because that's all there was. But some others joined up because maybe they had joined a street gang in their city. One particular one, Sammy the Bull Gravano, he joined a gang, a small street gang called the Rampers, and they would basically just fight and steal, and they were trying to help their families. They'd steal enough to help them survive, and then it basically, because they were so good at what they were doing, at helping their families and stealing enough bread, enough money to get bread for their sister or whatever, that basically a made Mafia member would see them and notice, hey, this guy's doing good work on the streets. And so they would pull you in.
Poach you from the gang.
That's exactly it. So Sammy the Bull Gravano, actually, that's how he got into, he started off in the Colombo family, but that's how he started off, is because they call him Tony the Shorty Spiro, saw that this guy was doing good work. He's doing good work out on the streets. And so he pulled him in and he said, look, you're going to get killed. You're out there, you're crazy, you don't care what anybody thinks about you. And because you're not afraid, you don't have anybody to protect you. You don't have anybody to back you up. And so somebody is going to put a hit on you. Somebody's going to hurt you.
Then he sold it like, hey, we're a family over here. We always got your back. We got tons of family members and houses. What do you got over there? A little gang?
Exactly.
A little small territory in that town?
Yeah. So basically, then he pulled him in, and then a made member will have many associates. They take these associates and they basically say, you're going to live with me. I don't care if you're married, you're leaving everything you have, and you're going to spend all day and all night with me. I'm going to know you. I'm going to know the way you think. I'm going to know when you scratch your head. I'll know everything about you. And that person becomes an associate. And so Sammy the Bull Gravano, he became an associate. He left the Rampers and he moved into, now he's an associate. He's not a made member yet, but now he's an associate of a made member. And that made member basically becomes a mentor.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, and then back in the day, made members, the reason why you wanted to join is instead of going to the police in these like Little Italy in New York and places like that, instead of going to the police when you had a problem, you went to a made member and they protected you. So you wanted that protection. You wanted to be a part of a family.
Right.
So basically, he, and we don't have to talk just about Sammy the Bull Gravano because there's a lot to talk about him, but there's a lot of other men and people to talk about. But they become, I take you in and you become a part of my crew. Once you become a part of my crew, then you have to start putting in work. And at that point, I can tell you to do whatever I want to tell you to do. As long as I have permission from my boss, I can have you go beat somebody up for me. I can have you go take something over. And so what's amazing to me about the Mafia is how much in business they are.
Right. Yeah,
So-
those are the stories I know. The Mafia being involved with Las Vegas and the casinos.
Yeah, so like Paul Castellano, who was the Mafia, he was the boss for, I believe, the Gambino family for a period of time. He said this, quote, "There's two types of gangsters. Number one, there are thugs. And number two, there are racketeers." What did he mean by that? He meant there are the thugs, the ones that'll go and, beat you with a bat. And then there's the racketeers who are more the business guys. They run the unions. They run politicians. They get involved in all of the inner workings of construction and
Yeah. So yeah, I've heard stories like this of how they would get involved in running a business. The business didn't voluntarily say, "Hey, I want to be a part of the Mafia." But what would happen is one day someone walks into you run in your shop or restaurant. Somebody walks into your restaurant and says, "Hey, how you doing? Listen, we can give you protection. It's a crazy world out there." "Oh no, man, I don't need any protection." And then that Mafia guy would leave. He'd come back, and maybe your window's broken. He's like, "Oh, look at that. Your window's broken. That's a shame. You probably need some protection because look at that. Your window's broken." And then the next day, more stuff would be broken. The Mafia member would come back. "Oh, look at that. That's such a shame. Your shop is getting destroyed. You really need some protection. You pay us for protection, and we'll make sure this doesn't happen." Well, obviously, the Mafia is the one causing the damage to this guy's shop. They just want him to buy in. And once he buys in, now the Mafia can influence him because they paid him. They're part of the crime now.
So basically, what you're saying is that when so let's say you own,
And it wasn't always that innocent. Sometimes they would threaten their children. They say, "Hey, oh yeah, we didn't want anything to happen to little Timmy. He gets off the bus at 2:30 over there on Gillespie Street." And then the shop owner would know, "Oh, he knows where my family is. He knows everything about me." So then they'd have to buy in.
So basically, there was a tax, like a
Yes.
Basically,
so
you paid a percentage or a tax.
They would charge whatever they wanted. They could just charge, $1,000 a month or whatever they wanted to charge these guys
for this protection.
They're going to pay for this protection, quote unquote. But really, they just don't want their shop to get burglarized, broken into, or their kids to be threatened.
Wow. So, what's amazing to me in my research,
This is like small businesses, how they influence them. And it's similar tactics for the larger businesses and with the casinos and different things. But anyway, go ahead.
So what's amazing to me is how each family they have a nose for money. And that's really what the Mafia is all about. It's about loyalty, but then it's about how can we support our families and how can we make money. And so it's amazing to me how each family kind of has their own, what's the right word? Almost like their own lane, kind of where they are skilled or experts in. For instance, the Gambino family, they were big into bars, nightclubs, and construction. So they basically, some of their maid members, in fact, at one point, two of their maid members, Mikey Scars and Sammy the Bull Gravano, controlled almost every construction worker in New York.
Wow.
Was under their pyramid of authority because they had that much control. And some of these were, in fact, most of these were actually legitimate businesses, but they began to skim off the top or, things of that nature. And so, but a lot of times they would do good deeds as well. They would help if somebody called and said, "Hey, I need 30 sheetrock guys by tomorrow." Well, nobody's going to be able to give you that, but they would say, "Hey, let's help out here," or they would, play a part in helping along some of these construction projects. But at the end, it was all about making money and finding a way,
Well, of course,
to get extra money in their pockets.
It's all about money.
That's exactly it. So, but yeah, I found that interesting that, the Gambino family, they were big into, and then the Chicago family. The Chicago family was the ones actually that went to Las Vegas to start. and started getting heavily involved in the casinos in Vegas. It was the Chicago family. And so they kind of were in the lane of casinos.
Right. And it's when, go ahead.
No.
Yes, when they started influencing some casinos that they started making a lot of money. And this is tax-free money because it's casinos, right? Mm-hmm. And then other mafia members took notice of, hey, they're making a lot of money doing that, and it's legal.
Yes.
So they started buying casinos, and pretty soon they owned lots and lots of casinos. And pretty soon they owned the entire strip nearly. Maybe not owned it, but heavily influenced the owners of it, and the owners paid them for protection or paid them for their services.
It's amazing, okay? Like the Milwaukee family. So you wouldn't think that there would be a mob family in Milwaukee, but there was. I don't know that they still exist today, but this is back in the 70s and 80s. Think about it. In the 70s and 80s, one of the most prominent things that happened indoors was smoking. If you went into any business, they'd say, or any restaurant, do you want smoking or non-smoking? And right there, I mean, there was no real difference. You know, this booth might be smoking, this booth might be non-smoking. But where did people buy their cigarettes? They bought them in little vending machines in the hallway by the restroom of the restaurant or et cetera. And so the mob got very, very, very heavily involved in the vending machines in Milwaukee. And they actually were controlling almost all the cigarette vending machines of Milwaukee.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
You wouldn't think.
I never knew that there were cigarettes in vending machines.
Yeah, there used to be these little deals, just like you can get an M&Ms now or a soda now. There used to be where you'd go and you'd have your pick of, let's say 12 different types of Camel, Marlboro.
So forgive my ignorance. So I do know that they didn't think cigarettes were bad for you early on, right? Mm-hmm. Were kids allowed to smoke, and they just didn't care if the kids went to the vending machine, like minors?
That I don't know. I do remember seeing the vending machines in restaurants and stuff, etc. When I was a kid. But
I do remember when I was a kid going to a restaurant and they would say smoking or non-smoking. I do remember that.
Yeah, I would think that probably they wouldn't have encouraged it, but at that point.
Yeah, let's move on. I don't know.
No. So. Actually, just real quick, I think they probably would not have encouraged it, but how could they control it at that point?
Yeah, it's a vending machine. If the kid had a quarter.
Yeah, I mean, a kid can do whatever they want to do. If a parent sent them over and said, give me a pack of Camels. So, but what's interesting about that is it was the mob that was controlling the vending machines. You would never think that. But yes, they were in control of the vending machines in Milwaukee. So each family kind of had their lane that they ran in how they made their money. And moving on, but they but from 1957 to 1975, this was an interesting piece of trivia. It was closed. The Mafia was closed to letting anybody enter in to being a made man, quote unquote.
Were they just at capacity, or
no? Sicily and the people there in Italy had said that there was some shady stuff going on and how they were allowing people to come in. Maybe too many were coming in, and your
standards are too loose.
That's exactly it. They weren't vetting them properly, etc. And so they closed it. And so there was no men that actually got in and were actually a made member until about 1975. And then they opened it back up, and in 1975, that's when they started adding all these members. Different families were just adding all these people so they could go to war with each other. And one thing that I found interesting was Cosa Nostra. Basically, your family became my family. Your sister became my sister. Your brother became my brother. And so they protected each other, but they also looked out for each other if somebody was doing something wrong. Let's say that maybe you had a teenage daughter, or maybe a daughter that was 18, 19, 20, and she was out with a guy and she wasn't acting appropriately, and you seen her. You could call her over and you could say, just like an uncle or a dad would, and you could say, straighten up your act and go home right now.
Yeah, you're embarrassing.
That's exactly right. And that was a big part of it, was your family's my family. So I look out for your family, and I look out for the name of Cosa Nostra. So if you're doing damage to our name by how you're acting, we have the authority to enforce or deal with you. And one of their big things is you represent the family and don't disrespect the family, whatever you do. And so in all of their things, in their lifestyle and all that, it was all about don't disrespect the family. And
and every made member and associate is enforcing that.
Yes. And so, which brings us to another point. So if I'm a made member, you're a made member, you do something that disrespects the family, and a hit gets put on you, and they tell me, hey, Don, go kill John. So I go and I plug you in the back of the head. Yes, it's awful, and I'm in no way making light of somebody that got killed.
I don't care. In this scenario, I'm dead, so I don't care.
Okay, so you're dead. But what's amazing to me about it is these guys and their thinking, in that it was like you knew when you disrespected the family.
Oh, yeah.
You were going to get killed.
Right.
So yes, it's my fault, obviously, that I killed you.
So right before you shoot me, I just say, I deserve this, Don. Go ahead.
But so there's actually stories of men doing that very thing.
I completely understand.
Basically bowing their heads and saying, take me out. I disrespected the family.
Wow.
They had such a loyalty and a respect for their family that they didn't want to bring it shame, that they would recognize that this is the punishment that I deserve. And so basically it was like you broke the rules. You knew you had this coming. You forced me to do this.
Right. I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah. And another thing is
brutal. It's brutal.
It's brutal.
It makes sense.
But if I don't do it to you, then it's going to happen to me. If I don't kill you, I will be killed.
Then we're both going to get killed.
That's right, because of
And I understand that, so go ahead and shoot me.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I know we're getting a little short on time, so I want to be careful of that. But
we're all right.
Something that I found, really, I don't know. I just found it intriguing. So talking about specific crimes, there was a Mafia member named DB, and a hit was put out on him. So two made members.
So DB did something bad.
He did something bad that disrespected the family.
I'm with you.
So
I'm just rehashing.
Yep, thank you. So two made members call him over to the house. Mm-hmm. And they're just talking to him like it's totally normal. Hey man,
come on over, biscuits and gravy.
That's exactly it. We want you to come over.
Or sausage, I don't know.
And so while they're there, there's a planner, and then there's a triggerman. Okay. So the planner of the hit, he's the high-ranking guy. He figures this out. This is how we're going to do it.
Is the planner on site?
The planner is on site.
Okay, he's one of the guys. Okay.
Yep. So the planner's sitting there, and he's just talking to DB. This is a true story. He's talking to DB, and while he's talking to DB, he looks over at the triggerman, and he calls him by name, and he says, "Hey, go get DB a coffee over there in the cabinet. Get him a coffee, just as smooth and as normal as anybody. If I had you in my home, I would offer you a drink. You want a water, you want a coffee." And so he said, "Hey, go get DB a coffee." And so the triggerman walks over to the cabinet, opens the cabinet, pulls out a silenced gun, checks over his shoulder, looks and makes sure that the guy's not looking, walks behind him, the coast is clear, pulls the trigger, and with his silencer, shoots the guy in the head.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the next time I'm in a family's house and they're a really tight family and they're really close together and they say, "Hey, go get Jonathan a coffee,"
you better look over your shoulder.
I'm going to run out the door.
You better, or better yet, you better not disrespect the family. Yeah.
I'm just not hanging out with Mafia members.
Yeah. The other thing, Paul Castellano, who was the boss of the Gambino family for many years, he which remind me to talk to you about how bosses change, which is pretty interesting.
Somebody has to die.
Yeah. So, but Paul Castellano basically told his crew that, hey, we're not going to sell drugs anymore. The FBI is getting onto us, so we're gonna back off.
It's too dangerous.
Yeah, but John Gotti said, no, we're not backing off at all. I'm making good money on this.
Back to arrogant John.
So yeah, so Paul Castellano had given the word, the law, basically that we're not going to sell anymore. John Gotti says, yes, we are.
Ooh, it's a power struggle.
There it is. And so they decided, because of some of the things that Paul Castellano was doing, they decided to take him out. And so this is how professional these guys are. Amazing. They planned this hit. Sammy the Bull Gravano actually is the one who planned this hit. And he planned it to where there was 11 hitmen. 11 hitmen. Paul Castellano pulled up. It was Christmas time in New York, Times Square. Okay, so imagine the thousands of people that are everywhere. But they pulled it off, unreal, like a choreographed dance. So Paul Castellano pulls up with his driver. He pulls up to a steakhouse. And while he pulls up to this steakhouse, there's 3 cars with 11 hitmen. 4 of them are going to be the actual trigger guys. 7 of them are backups. And they pull up. Soon as he pulls up and gets out on the sidewalk, these 4 hitmen were there dressed in trench coats and fur hats. They looked like they were part of the steakhouse welcoming, like who's the guys that park the cars? I can't think
chauffeur.
of it. Like a chauffeur or like a valet parking. Yes. So they look like they were a part of that team. And he pulls up, and they immediately, surrounded by all these crowds, they immediately went up and emptied their guns into him and the driver. While he's standing on the sidewalk, he dies right there. Now, here's the interesting thing. There was 5 minutes before that, there was 2 police officers who were standing less than 70 feet away. They did not see this, okay? And so Sammy the Bull Gravano, who is sitting in his car with a walkie-talkie, kind of coordinating the troops, is sitting there, and he recognizes, oh man, there's these cops. I don't want to kill these cops if I don't have to. But if they don't leave right now.
They brought enough people just in case.
That's it. And he finally realizes, I now am a backup shooter. It's my job to take out these 2 cops. And so he is all prepared and ready to do it when they turned and started walking away. And they actually walked away and turned around and went around the block. And just a couple of minutes later, that's when Paul Castellano got there, and they blew the guy to smithereens. Come to find out, there was actually another officer who saw the entire shooting. And the FBI went to him and they asked him, how come you didn't pull your gun?
Well, there's 11 of them.
Well, but you didn't see all 11.
Oh,
you only saw the 4.
The 4.
And so they asked him, why didn't you pull your gun? Why didn't you, all this shooting is going on. Why didn't you do anything? And this guy, he said, it was such a professional hit. And I could tell it was so well orchestrated, and it was so much like a choreographed dance, that I knew that the minute I pulled my gun, they would have had a backup shooter ready to kill me. He didn't know that Sammy the Bull Gravano had done exactly that and was ready to kill him.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just amazing how these guys, they're so professional. So very quickly, we could talk about a ton of different things, but the last thing that I think is so neat is the FBI pursued. There was actually an FBI agent named Joseph Pistone who infiltrated one of the families. I believe it was the Gambino family. I could be wrong.
So he gets initiated, or
he infiltrates it. Not for 6 months, not for a year, not for 2 years, for 6 years.
Oh, he's just part of the family now.
He was part of the mob, to the point that when he took and broke the case, and his street name was Donnie Brasco, and I guess there's been a movie about him. I guess it's a big hit where they talk about this Joe Pistone, who's still alive, by the way.
Oh,
yeah. But he infiltrated so amazingly that when he finally broke the case, his crew that he had been so tight with did not believe. They basically said he must have turned informant. He had to tell on us. It was only because he was going to die. They thought he was an informant. They did not realize he was an actual agent.
Well, what kind of crimes did this guy commit when he was with him? My goodness.
He actually he would go for 6-month stretches without seeing his family. He actually never had to commit a violent crime. He was able to...
Never committed a violent crime, but these guys had the maximum respect for him.
That's exactly it. So, yeah, he's a very interesting read about Joseph Pistone. But because of all of this and the FBI's pursuit of these guys, they began to do and break their own golden rule. And the golden rule is what? It's silence. Never tell on us. Never break the oath. And so in the late 80s and 90s, they began to have so many defectors. There was just defections nonstop. And one of the things was they knew they kind of had the get out of jail pass. Here's what they could do. They could go and kill somebody and they'd go to jail and maybe they get a 40-year sentence. But if they said, we'll cooperate with the FBI, they knew that their sentences would get dropped way down and they would either get let out or, and then they'd have to join witness protection, but they knew it was my get out of jail free card. And so they began to turn on each other and those oaths of loyalty no longer meant anything. So John Elite, who was actually not Italian, he was from over in Europe somewhere, but I don't remember his actual nationality. But he was an associate of the Gambino. He was actually John Gotti's enforcer. He's called the Sheriff. And he shot personally over between 30 and 40 men himself. And he baseball batted 100 plus men.
Whoa.
Yes.
This guy's a mean dude.
And then you had Michael Franchese, who was actually just a major money manipulator.
So what did this guy do that was so crazy? All these defectors, and we got this guy who's a really mean person.
You had, yes, he actually wasn't so mean as he was a racketeer.
He was the guy that
John Elite was, yes. Yeah. And you had Michael DiLeonardo, which was Mikey Scars. He was one of the guys that controlled almost all of the construction in New York. You had Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was another guy who was the underboss. Okay. Ralph Natali, which was in Philadelphia. But all of these guys ended up defecting. And when asked by everyone asked, why did you defect? Was it because you no longer believed in the life? And they'd say, no, I still believe in the life. I still believe in what Cosa Nostra stands for. Then why did you get out? And every one of these guys to a man said, when you didn't back me up when I needed backed up, that's when I decided I'll turn on you. And so basically,
when they felt betrayed,
every one of these men were guys that their boss turned on them.
So these guys defected.
They defected.
And then they go into witness protection.
Yes.
Did all of them survive?
So yes, all of these that I just named are still living.
Oh, man.
And some of them in fact, most of them are no longer in witness protection. And they've basically stated, you know what? We're just going to live our lives the best we can. We did the best we could. We still love our brothers there. We weren't turning on them per se, but we were turning on the guys above us who forced us to do the things that we did. And so it's just interesting to me that you could have so many defectors. And what's also interesting is I wonder how many FBI agents have still and are still infiltrating the New York Mafia.
Still undercover, still there.
Yes. So
watch out, Mafia. They're going to get you.
They're going to get you. Yeah. So, we could go on for days about the Mafia and the different hits and things that they put out. And maybe at some point we will get into that. But I just find it interesting and intriguing that they live by such a code. And yet, at the same time, when somebody breaks that code, they recognize that you have to kind of move on with your life. And
well, these guys that defected, they gave their life. They gave everything. They had to live with someone else. They had their enforcer. They had to carry around baseball bats and guns and do all these things. And then they could feel let down over whatever. And they feel like, hey, I gave my all, and you guys couldn't even stop me from going to jail.
That's right. And so now what's interesting is how they have kind of, if you listen to any interviews or read any books on these guys, they're basically saying, look, I don't want my family to go through what I've gone through. I don't want them to live what I've lived.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that either. Maybe they're getting a little older. Maybe their kids are getting a little older, and they realize, wow, I haven't been there for my kids. I've been around carrying around baseball bats.
Yeah, that and like John Elite, he actually says he took his son, his 7-year-old son, left his son in the car and went and shot a guy. His son heard the gunshot, and then he comes back and later on in life tells his son, "Hey, you went on your first hit when you were 7 years old." But he starts realizing, and these other men.
Now, I did hear about that. Then there's a tactical reason for that. They would bring a kid with them, so just in case the police get a description of the car. Oh, he was driving a yellow car. And the police pull this guy over, and there's a kid in the car. He's like, "Oh, this probably isn't him. He's just driving his kid around."
Yeah, exactly. So
it's not a hitman.
Yeah, and I mean, we could go into so many things. They would do that, and then if they did get caught, like John Gotti, 2 or 3 different trials, they bribed the jury, got him off. So many different things. That the mafia is so intriguing, and yet I find it that these guys really in their later years are saying, "Hey. Loyalty is great, and having a family is great, but make sure that you don't go to the lengths that we went to." So,
all right. Well, that's all the time we have today for this episode. Let us know what you think. We appreciate the feedback we've got so far, and if you've liked what you heard, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts if you're listening on that. And we appreciate all the reviews, and we read every single one of them. Let us know what you guys would like to hear next week. We're probably going to do something else along the same lines, something to do with crime, because it's so popular. But then we're going to switch back into our normal regimen, which is things that we find fascinating. It could be submarines. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. But we'll take your suggestions. We'll look them over, and we look forward to hearing from you guys.